Hello, everyone. I'm Ernie Humphrey, the CEO of CFO Webinars. I would like to thank everyone for taking the time to join us for our webinar today, Leveraging Excel and Financial Reporting to Deliver Data Truth. First and foremost, I hope everyone is safe and healthy, and I want to convey the sincere gratitude of myself and everyone at Insight Software, our webinar partner, for all the relatives, friends, and families of each attendee who are on the front lines of fighting the coronavirus and what these people are doing every single day to help keep us all safe and healthy. I would like to thank my webinar partner today, Insight Software, whose strong commitment to thought leadership helped us make this webinar possible, and who also shares my strong commitment to serving the treasury and finance professions. Data is the foundation of FP&A success. Delivering the right data at the right time to company leaders that inform better decisions across the enterprise is FP&A done right. Yet, research reveals that only 10% of companies can get the right information to the right people at the right time, and only 24% believe the data in their reporting solution is accurate. In today's world, that means a single version of the truth is merely a dream for most companies. What does data truth really mean? How can your company achieve a single version of data truth? Can companies really leverage Excel to deliver data truth and effective financial reporting? Today, you will discover how to assess the quality of the data your company has, how to impact data quality, and how to leverage Excel to ensure analytical integrity and deliver financial and operating reports that matter. Before we delve into the content, I'm going to offer a few quick words about CFO webinars, cover a few housekeeping items, cover our learning objectives as they offer the pillars of our value proposition for you for investing an hour of your valuable time with us today, and introduce my speaking partner for today's webinar, Sue Maloney. Now for the exciting housekeeping items after I talk about CFO webinars. I got ahead of myself. CFO webinars offers webinars designed to empower FP&A and finance success at companies of all sizes across all industries. We only do what we do best, which is virtual events. Now for your exciting housekeeping items. Those of you interested in receiving CTP or FP&A credit, you'll have to answer all the polling questions, remain on for the duration of the webinar, and complete the post-webinar survey, which will launch immediately following the conclusion of our webinar today. If you have any questions regarding CTP or FP&A credit, please send an email to Ernie@360thoughtleadership.com. Again, that's Ernie@360thoughtleadership.com. We'd like to hear from you today. We can take your questions at any time in the Q&A section of your GoToWebinar control panel. We'll do our best to get to your questions at the tail end of the webinar today, time permitting, in our Q&A session. Fear not, if we don't have time to get to your questions, we'll follow up with you directly after the webinar today. Finally, we appreciate everyone's consideration in answering all of our polling questions today and taking the short survey at the end of the webinar today. As we always strive to improve the ROI we offer our event attendees for our valuable time. It's now my pleasure to welcome Sue Maloney to the webinar. Sue is a Senior Solutions Engineer at Insight Software. She has over 25 years of experience in the software and accounting industry and was also the Controller and Director of Financial Systems. Sue has a functional knowledge of Oracle, eBay Suite, Allocation Banner, as well as knowledge of various reporting tools in the industry. Sue, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. Welcome to the webinar.
Thanks, Ernie. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you so much. And so let's talk about our agenda for today. So I'm going to walk us through the first piece. We're going to talk about data truth, the theory, right? Let's talk about the theory, and then let's talk about the reality. So we'll have a little reality check here, and then we'll talk about Excel and data truth. And this is where Sue will enlighten us on analytical integrity, and then how to leverage Excel and financial reporting. And Sue will give us a brief demo and show us how that's done. I'm going to confess. And I was an Excel basher back in the day. And so the more that I've gotten to see that the solutions out there have matured, especially the last maybe 2 or 3 years, I've really become more of a lover of Excel for financial reporting. And I want to thank my webinar partner, Insight Software, for educating me there. And so I think there's a common perception about the evils of Excel. And I think a lot of those are user errors. And I don't think we really spend enough time really educating people. And so people love Excel. So let's help people optimize, right, how they use Excel and their users. And it can be extremely powerful and valuable. And finally, we'll wrap things up with some closing thoughts. And if we have time for Q&A, we will definitely love to hear your questions, and I'd love to have a little bit of an active conversation with Sue. So let's start off with what I like to call the 10 pillars of data truth. So here is the theory, right? So in theory, the data is collected from known and trusted sources. And so I wish that was the case. And I've been involved in global FP&A surveys for the past few years. We usually have 300, 350 folks across the globe, FP&A and finance leaders. I'm always having conversations with folks about data quality and survey data around there, and trying to get my arms around, what does that mean, and how much is that even possible? And so I think in some sense, the more that we hear about big data, right, we just assume that it's coming from a known or trusted source. But as we've all probably learned the hard way, garbage in, garbage out, and actually the incorrect data can do more damage than not having data at all. So what we really want to do is we want to combine the right data that really helps us verify, right, folks' insights. And so a lot of the challenge that we have in finance is we love the insights from operation and marketing and sales, but what we want to do is back up their intuition with facts, right? And so we really need that data to be from a known and trusted source, and we also need to have some way to verify the data. So that's we talk about that in just a moment. But you really should consider if you don't have some data accuracy guidelines. And so I want to be clear here that obviously, in essence, it's probably not possible to get 100% accuracy, but you have to look at what you're using the data for, right? So how important is that data accuracy, and what decisions is it impacting? And so it might not be that you need your data to be extremely accurate. Let me give you an example. So I used to work, when I was in corporate finance, I worked in the submersible motor industry. And so weather was a tremendous determinant of what our demand for our motors was going to be. And we based our production on that. So sometimes our weather was just based on, are we going to have a wet spring or a dry spring, or the daily forecast or the weekly forecast? As we all know, that hourly forecast can change. And so it wasn't possible for us, but we did need to consider that in our forecast. So we had a shifter in there, right, for up and down. And even though that data wasn't 100% accurate, it was the best that we could get, and it was valuable in helping us make better decisions. And now, here's another piece. The data quality needs to be ensured as it enters the business system. And so obviously I said garbage in, garbage out, but also good data in, garbage analysis, right, garbage out. And so once the data comes in the system, what you really need to do is really create that audit trail for the data, right? So I don't know why someone would edit the data. You should have a cleaning process, but if someone were to edit the data or a data cell, you should be able to see who did that. They should be able to comment why they had done that. And so really it's about that data integrity. And so I think this gets lost a lot of times. But that being said, some people are spending the majority of their time, right, just on this piece of it. So if we can do better in this area, we're going to free folks up to focus their time on more productive activities. And what I've seen from the FP&A surveys and even the research, really recent research, and all my conversations, is that there's a tremendous amount of time misallocation in FP&A and financial reporting as well. And so if we can start to get the data right, it's important to get it right, but we don't need to be trying to spend 85 or 90% of our time on data and 5 to 10, 15% of our time on the analysis. And it's important we have clearly outlined data assumptions, and so I think that's important as well. And so at the end of the day, sometimes you have to get people to buy in, right? Is this the right data? Well, I don't believe the data, right? We've had these conversations before. They're all politics around data. So if you clearly outline this, so there's no way you can get that data. Well, this is where I got it from, right? So sometimes if you're going to do an analysis, you want to be upfront. Okay, these are my data assumptions. This is where I got the data. I'm assuming it's this accurate. I'm assuming how it's going to change. And I'm not saying you're always going to agree, but let's be transparent there. So sometimes you're going to have some people might be a little stubborn about using data, leveraging data. And so you kind of have to get them on board. So what I usually do if there's someone that's Mr. or Mrs. No, I engage them right up front. Say, okay, John, I realize that you might have issues with this data. This is where I'm getting the data. Is there anywhere that you think, how can we improve the data? So get them involved in that data. And so those are the top 5 things that we're seeing here. And so let's go ahead and talk about the next 5. So number 6, data values are the same, right? This is about one version of the truth. And so that's incredibly important. So we need to validate that as well. And so as data is being passed back and forth, and especially sometimes if we haven't automated that, right? We might be using Excel, we might be dumping data, transposing data, rekeying in data. So we really want to take a look in the mirror and see, are we manually inputting data at all, which is ideal we don't, but are we doing it more than once? And if we're doing it more than once, which I don't recommend, are we doing an audit to make sure that that data is consistent? And we could all tell horror stories about in the past where we have that hasn't been the case, and that one version of the truth has led to some business decisions that we'd all rather not take ownership of. And then I mentioned this a little bit before. We want changes to data that are going to be attributable to given system users. So if someone's going to use the data, what we used to like to call massaging the data, we want to make sure that that's attributable to given systems user. And I've had these arguments back in the day when I was in corporate treasury. I used to help create the financial reports for the benefit plans. I used to manage some accrual accounts, and let's just say some folks like to massage the data. And so I was very opposed to that, and I got in trouble because I really am a researcher at heart, and I really was like, okay, if you're going to massage the data, there's going to be a note there. If you want to move the accrual account, then okay, CFO, you're signing off on that, right? Just because my name's on the GL account. So let's all be on the same page as that. And then I mentioned this before, and I think I'd like to see some research on this as well. How do you establish the trust, right, between the producers and the consumers, right? So especially if you're a data producer, and so you want someone that has experience and understands. So someone who's a producer needs to have the ability to do a common sense check, right? And so the other thing would be something that automates, like if there's data that's collected over time, is there a big variance? So, well, let's flag that. And so someone needs to be able to see that up front. And then as you get experience, let's say this data is changed by 500%. And you're going to report it to your consumer, and John is going to be like, no, wait a minute. So you're going to be proactive and say, hey, John, you'll note that this went up. You can imagine how much time that would have saved. I've had a lot of conversations, and so as I was a little bit younger in my career, I learned. And as I was putting together information that was going to be used in the board book or something like that, I would say, I would just be upfront. I know they're going to ask me about this variance. I know they're going to ask me where this number comes from. I know they're going to ask me why the accrual went in a way that didn't have the positive impact on our financial results. And this is just what the data is telling me. We got to figure out how to mitigate those data politics. I think part of that can just be building that consensus, have a meeting, right? Authenticity. Let's have a data policy. It's just like anything else. You want to understand all the steps in the process, and you want to educate these folks. Okay, this is how we're collecting data. If you're interested, I want you to feel like you have accountability. We're not hiding things from you. So the worst thing, what is it that fuels politics? Someone thinks you have an agenda, right? And so we have to kind of remove the bias in what we do with data in our policy, but we also have to remove the perception of bias as well. And I think that's incredibly important, and people can pay more attention to that. And then I think it's always a good idea, lastly, to have a consistent data language and definition guide, and so we're not lost. So I mentioned before this term big data, which I don't like, and I'm glad I've seen it kind of go away a little bit, but I think we have to have a data diet, right? So it's not the case that we don't want to constantly be verifying the drivers, right, of our business and our success and our productivity, but we don't want to just dump a bunch of data right into an analysis or into a model just for the sake of having it. And so I think there is what we call data overload, which I'll talk about a little bit. So I hope these are valuable to you. And in all honesty, I wish I would have had these back when I was doing more analytical work. And so I've probably come up with this top 10 based on the experience and honestly on some of the mistakes that I've used in the past. So I'm going to share some information here. There's a great report, the State of Enterprise Data Quality by SimsCore. There's a hyperlink in there if you'd like the slides. And so sometimes I like to show this just because you feel like you're not alone, right? Where you stand, it depends on where you sit, right? But so, and this kind of scares me. Understanding of data across organization, very good, 14%. A dramatic pause there, right? 48%. Actually, I have a slight positive on this, right? 62% at least. But here's what we need to do better. And so, I think there needs to be someone who's kind of the data steward. So maybe it's your chief data officer, right? I just made a new term, but let's survey people, right? And let's see partial understanding. Okay, what is it that we need to know? Minimal understanding, no understanding. So what I'd like to see is if this was the stakeholders, right? What's your understanding? So if I've got a stakeholder that's in this part here, boy, I'm going to be scared. So I think we obviously need to balance. Not every single person in the whole company needs to understand all the data. If they want to, we should be open to doing that. But I think this is just interesting. And again, this survey is interesting as well. And so let's go ahead and take a look at good understanding of the data, right? So of the folks that answered good understanding of the data, if you answered good or very good, what percentage of the data is well understood by you, key stakeholders? And so we see greater than 70%, 20%, 50 to 75%. So we still can see. So it just gives us a little more in-depth that, yeah, Houston, we have a problem. Well, I have a few big companies that are in Houston, and they like to tell me, Houston, we have a solution, so that's the way we want to do. And the good news is Sue's going to show us how Excel can be used to be in the latter. We have a solution for you. And so just some research that I've been involved in, FP&A global survey. And so the reality, right, usability of data, right? And so this is what I talked about earlier, right? We have the right data at the right time. This is what data nirvana is. Only 10%, right? 13% are on data overload, not timely data, working on getting the data. And so only 10% of the folks write data at the right time. And also another caveat to that, the other caveat to that is that they might think they're in data nirvana, but what if the data is not the right quality, right? What if it's bad quality data? So issues around the usability of data, no single version of the truth exists. I would gather that number is probably much higher. Data is not turned into the right information, right? Everyone in the company has access to the relevant data. Only 32%, right? So we'd like to, in the office of the CFO, I think one of the other things that we could be extremely helpful in is really asking people, right, what data do you need? What data do you need? What tools do you need, right? And asking them what data could you have that you don't have could help you make better decisions. What data that you do have would be more valuable if we got it in a more timely manner or a more granular manner, and you'll be amazed. And sometimes you'll really eliminate some of the reports that are going out, some of the data is being collected. Sometimes companies get so big and you're pushing out reports and you're pushing out data, and sometimes you got to take a pause and say, what are we using this data for? Who's using it? Why is it important? Maybe it's not important, and you can really free up. Again, one of the things which is incredibly powerful is once we get control of this data and the data truth and have this process in place, we're going to remove a productivity that is up and down the productivity drag that's up and down the office of the CFO. How would you rate the quality of the data used to run your business? Good. I'm happy to see very good. Only 8% is excellent. So here's my concern: fair, poor. I don't know is really concerning, but good. We should want to do better. Only 8% reported excellent data. So again, it's just showing that the importance of data truth and something that really deserves the attention of all companies. So some research from my friends at APQC. They have a lot of amazing research data. They do research all day, every day. So if you're interested in getting a deeper dive in terms of by industry, data access and relevancy and all things metric. And so this is some research for them. So they were a little bit more. This was a little bit more positive. 21% were very satisfied, but still we still have moderately satisfied. And so giving you a little bit of a different look. APQC has more of a tilt towards the enterprise price companies. So I would say that the other research results were probably didn't have a tilt in the enterprise size companies. We would expect the enterprise size companies on some level to have be satisfied with the data. I would hope so, because they're probably spending a lot more money with it. And sometimes it's just a matter of you don't know what you don't know. A little more color from our friends at APQC. And here's usability of data. Only 16% are completely confident in the data that they're using. So if my career is based on data that I'm getting from someone and I'm not completely confident, I'm going to have a little trouble sleeping at night. Very confident, and I like that. But if I'm over here, we still have 30, 42, 43, over 40%. I'm only moderately confident, or I can't even use the data I'm getting. These are. It's time to see if we can do better. And then we'll talk a little bit about the quest for data truth, right? And so this is what we talked about a little earlier. I touched on it. Data analysis, time allocation. So we start looking at our time allocation, and insight generation is where we want all of our time. Again, this is from data. I think there's well over 300 survey respondents from across the globe. Only 20% of that time allocation. So where you stand depends on where you sit. So if you've never done this type of analysis or looked internally, let's do that. How much time is spent, right? Actually, this is the best place, driving action. So I misspoke there, only 6%. But you should have this internal survey, have these conversations, and look at that time allocation. As I keep seeing surveys where look at time allocation, I just don't think. I think that once we get into the business where we're all salaried employees, we don't pay enough attention to time allocation. And you're not trying to overmanage someone. You're just like, I want to understand how you're using your time, and you position it as, I want to make you more productive, right? And so a little bit more data. Your greatest challenges: verifying data or aggregating data into one system. And then so a little bit more data, just for some color here. And I think you're all probably shaking your heads, but I think it's really important, especially if you just look at this slide and just take an internal look and say, let's see how many of these things exist at my company. Are they impacting the decision quality? Are there things that I can do about them? Are there gaps? Are there things I need to address? And what's the cost, right? What's the cost-benefit analysis? And a lot of times the right technology in conjunction with the right practices are going to really take care of some of those. So do we have many sources of data? Can we do anything about it? Is our governance, right? Is that an issue? Do we have too much data? Inconsistent formats? Definitions, missing it. So you're like, yep, shake your head. You're like, hey, I already know that. But lack of tools. So I think it's important that it makes you think. So a lot of the content I give I want to make you think, and then I want to give you some insights, but it's about just kind of taking that look in the mirror. So if you answered fair or poor to the sub-quality data, what are the repercussions, right? What are the repercussions? And then this is I love this graphic here because we really need to look at, right? So I like the position thing. What's the cost of inaction? If we don't pay attention to data, these are the things that are happening. This one is obviously customer dissatisfaction, which means our end customer, damaging our customer relationships, or even if it's our internal customers. Bad, wasted time, again, a huge productivity drag across the enterprise. Lost revenue, increased cost, right? Results from the tools, we're not using it. Prevented us from adopting technology, made my organization non-compliant. We really don't want this. That's a career killer right down there. So I think there's just some tremendously interesting data here from these surveys. And so now that I've kind of given you some of the problems that we've seen in terms of data truth, and sometimes I think people, and myself, I'll confess, used to blame Excel for some of our data issues. So now let me go ahead and bring Sue Maloney in, and she's going to take us through the power of Excel and how, when Excel is used in the right ways, it can be tremendously valuable to an organization of any size. Sue?
Thanks. I appreciate that, Ernie. So Ernie, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that you mentioned and the things that we see when we're talking with folks across the world and some of the challenges that they have in using their reporting tools today. A little bit about our company, Insight Software. Our focus is on the Office of the CFO and making sure that we can simplify your financial and operational reporting, providing it in a way to the users that it makes sense and is easy to use. Our company is headquartered in Raleigh, North Carolina, although we do have offices around the world. The little dots on that map there will reflect some of those different locations for you. We are currently serving well over 25,000 customers worldwide. And that's really important when you think about the number of folks that rely on data and how they're getting to that data. We're helping them every single day. As a result, we consider ourselves the #1 provider of reporting solutions and have had well over a 94% customer retention rate. So that's really promising in the use of our tools. Now, I find that this study is really enlightening as well, kind of piggybacking on the things that Ernie mentioned already. Really, Microsoft Excel is the largest reporting solution out there. People are using it every day somehow to get to the data that they want to see or presenting the data that they want to see. Whether it is useful data or not is another story. Whether it's accurate data, again, a completely different scenario. But this is pretty telling in the usage of Excel as a way to report the information that's happening inside businesses every day. I think we have a quick poll question on how you use Excel today or how often. So why don't we go to that poll question next?
All
And
right.
if you
I gotcha. Thank you very much,
okay,
Sue. I'm
yeah.
going to go ahead and launch the polling question here. Just asking you to share with us how often you use Excel. Weekly, not every day, less than an hour a day. Daily, 1 to 3 hours a day. 70, more than 3 hours a day, or none of the above. We appreciate everyone's consideration in answering all of our polling questions here today. I'm going to go ahead and leave the polling question up for another 30 to 45 seconds. Then we're going to go ahead and take a quick peek at the results, and then we'll go ahead and see if anything really sticks out to us, and then we'll go ahead and hand the floor back over to Sue, and she's going to really get into, and this is what I talked about, she's going to get into data truth. You really shouldn't blame Excel for your issues, again, which I've done in the past. I'm confessing to that. So I just want to, again, all of you who want CTP credits or FP&A, you'll have to answer all the polling questions. Again, we love everybody to answer all of our polling questions. So I'm going to go ahead and leave the polling question up for another 2 or 3 seconds, then we'll take a quick peek. All right, I'm going to close polling question. I'll give you a few more seconds, a little bit of latency with the polling sometimes. I miss sports, so 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you everyone for answering the polling question. So we have daily, more than 3 hours a day. We have 60%. Which to me seems about right. And if I look at daily or 1 to 3 or more than 3, I think that's about what I expected. I think it might be a little bit heavier than I would have expected for more to 3 hours a day. Sue, does this resonate with you at all? Anything stick out or any color you want to add here?
Yeah, it's really kind of enlightening. I would have guessed that most of the folks would have been spending 1 to 3 hours per day. So
Right.
the larger number with the more than 3 hours is that's really important that we're spending that much time in a tool that may not be giving us all the right information.
Yeah, so obviously your content is going to be especially valuable to those folks and everyone as well, but especially the folks that are 3 hours a day, like just to make sure that, one, if they need to be in there 3 hours a day, they're getting most out of it, but maybe that's not necessary and they can get more of their day back and do more analysis.
Yeah, that would be the great goal, wouldn't it? So yeah, so using Excel, it's a great tool, and I use it every day, all day long, as a matter of fact, and everyone's comfortable with it. And you saw in the prior slide where we were looking at some of those statistics, over 1 billion people are using Excel. So you know that there's a comfort level there. It's on every computer that we work with pretty much at work, and so we're using it day in and day out. The question though is, how do we improve what we're doing with Excel so we can streamline what we're getting, we can automate it, and we can have a better use of our time. And so one of the things we want to do is talk a little bit about some best practices with Excel, and then I'll get in and show you some ways that we can take advantage of those best practices. When you're planning out your workbooks, think about how they're going to be used, who's going to be using them, and making sure that you can make them look as the best you possibly can. The goal is to, if these are going to be used as reports, for example, if your Excel worksheets are going to be used as reports, we want to make sure that they are clearly labeled, that the formulas are readable, that we're not forcing numbers in anywhere, that we have some verification in there, that everything is clear to the end user. And in thinking about how the worksheets are ordered in your workbook as they're going to be used, all of these are kind of best practices to keep in mind as you're building out maybe a report workbook. A lot of our customers build out their financial statement close process around Excel and have not only their financial statements, but also some reconciliation worksheets. And we want to try and streamline the flow of that data as well as best that we can. Okay, so I think let's move on to the next item.
Yeah, I think we have a polling question. So let me go ahead and dovetail on here a little bit. So a lot of you, right, you're 3 hours a day, you're power users. And so I think that for you might, it's important that we establish these best practices across the enterprise, right? And so I think it's probably more relevant for the people other than you that work in the organization, all these things, right? Labeling rows and columns, keeping formulas readables, right? Avoid hiding data, built-in data verification, because as you're the Excel guru, right, you're probably getting a lot of spreadsheets from someone else. Wouldn't it be nice to get what you want, right? And when you're consuming these Excel sheets, if you're building off them, having people adhere to these best practices. So I think it's almost like I would like to have a meeting of all Excel users. My wife used to work at a manufacturing company. It was beautiful. Every week they had their Excel expert come in, and he spent like 3 hours a day training everyone in the whole company. Now, you might not have to go that far, but just think how much better your life would be, especially if Excel is your primary reporting tool, if you were to make that kind of commitment, or over lunch. Bring food. People will come. So let me go ahead and launch our next polling question. I'm just asking you to share with us, do you manually dump data into Excel from your ERP or another data source? Again, I appreciate everyone's consideration in answering all of our polling questions today. Those of you interested in receiving CTP or FP&A credits, you're going to have to answer all of our polling questions here today. And I want to also remind you that we can take your questions in the questions area of your GoToWebinar control panel. I always have a few people that are having audio issues. What I normally find is that it's because of the computer audio, and so if you're not doing so, especially if you're having issues, if you dial in on your phone and use your phone for audio, I think you'll see, if you listen to the recording, that the data quality is really crisp, and so you will have access to that recording as well if you can't make that switch for us. So let me go ahead and leave the polling question up for another few seconds, and then we'll just take a quick peek here. Okay, I'll give you a 5-second warning. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's go ahead and take a quick peek here. So we have 73% of you are saying yes, 22% are no. Actually, even though 73% is high, I would have expected that to be even higher. Sue, what do you think there?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that maybe people are not thinking of is that some ERPs allow you to run a report and open it in Excel. So although they're not manually dumping data, they're still relying on a static Excel report.
Exactly. All right, amazing, great report, great comment. So let's go ahead and get into a little bit of the integrity issue. So let's take a look at data integrity. Sue?
Yeah, and that's really where we can add some value to what you're doing today, especially those of you that are spending so much time exporting. And as I said, I've talked with people every day that are doing the same thing and spending all of their time trying to manipulate the data in Excel the way they want to see it, or the way that a board member or management is requiring them to display it. All of those are valid reasons, but wouldn't it be nice if we could automate that a bit so you'd simply have to just refresh the data based on a change in time frame or period versus having to recreate it every month or re-export to Excel and get those VLOOKUPs and pivot tables defined just so. We want to try and reduce the amount of time you're spending, but also reduce the possibility for error. And we can do that through the use of some formulas in addition to the Excel formulas you already have. And certainly we've talked a bit about data integrity, and that's important, and having some standards that everyone's following across the board. If you can automate the way those reports are being built and display the information in a way that's easily understood across the board, that will certainly help in that process. People will start to understand what they're looking at. They'll be able to make decisions faster and easier, and you'll be the hero in providing these great, easy to use reports that everyone can understand. All right, let's move on to the next slide. I want to make sure I get enough time to show you some of our solutions here. Our Insight software, we use Excel frequently in the solutions that we offer. We want to make sure that the data analysis that you're doing can be done quickly, easily, and efficiently so that you can produce the best possible reports without having to constantly rebuild over and over again. Everybody likes to see pictures. We can do that in Excel very easily as long as the data that we're pulling is accurate and reliable and can be quickly refreshed and not having to continually build things out. And because you're using Excel and some basic Excel formulas, there's really very little programming needed at all. You don't need programming. I have no programming background at all. I build reports in Excel every day. It's really quite easy to do. So the solution I'm going to show you here in just a moment is Spreadsheet Server. It does work with over 130 different ERPs. Chances are we can connect to the ERP that you're using today and give you access to real-time drillable reports. That's always our goal, to streamline that reporting process where we can and automate as much as we possibly can. We do that through a connection directly to your ERP using our Excel add-in. So Spreadsheet Server is just that. It's an add-in in Excel. We just simply use some of the buttons in that add-in to go after the data we want to see in the ERP and present it. Some of our customers use multiple ERPs. Maybe they use one for financials. They might use something different for payroll and take a best of breed approach. That's not a problem. We can connect to multiple sources. So lastly, just real quickly, a case study by one of our customers. We certainly rely on our customers to share their stories, and you'll see on the right-hand side of that slide, there's some valuable information there about the amount of time that they've saved as a result of implementing Spreadsheet Server. All right, let's get into Spreadsheet Server and what we can do. So on my Excel worksheet here, you'll see that I have this ribbon called Spreadsheet Server. It's simply added right into my Excel ribbon, so nothing changes with what I can do in Excel. But with the ability of that ribbon, I can certainly then go after the information I want to see in whatever layout I want to see. So I've got a basic P&L here on my screen that I've created. It is in the layout that I'd like to see, that my management team wants to see. I don't have to rebuild this every month. I open up my workbook, I simply change a parameter, go to a different period, a different month, cost center, what have you, update the information. Oops, I updated the wrong cell there. I can go ahead and refresh everything and go ahead and get it live and dynamic. I can change even the period here. I've got the wrong cell updated here. So I can make changes to the year, the month, and go ahead and refresh my report. I can do the same with my rolling 12, my balance sheet, my department consolidation. Let's go back to this rolling 12 for a minute. We'll go ahead and make an adjustment here to the month, go to the next month, see the data all refresh. Now you can see it's going more into the next year. Let's bring in 2018 and go get some updated information here again. You can see there's all sorts of information at my fingertips. I don't have to go in and rebuild every time I want to see that data. If I want to get more specifics about the information that's presented in my worksheet, I have the opportunity to drill into details as well. So for example, my travel and entertainment line item, this $57,260, through the use of my drill down button in the ribbon and the fact that there is a formula in my formula bar, I can go after the information that supports that balance. Now I can see a listing of all of the different accounts that support that $57,000 balance. And you'll see even at the top of my window, the drill down balance, as well as the account grouping that's being used to display this information. Maybe I want to just filter in on a specific department. Maybe just take a look at one of these departments and the data that sits out in their specific activity. I can further drill down into the journal entries, take a closer look at what journal entries are making up that particular balance. So now I can see for the Department 421, here's my different accounts and the journal entries that were a result of AP invoices. Now I can stop here in the general ledger and just work within those journal entries, but because this came from a subledger, I might want to take a closer look at the subledger entry itself. Maybe I need to go directly to my accounts payable invoice and take a closer look. Well, here I can see that there was actually 2 invoices for Mr. David Lewis, giving me some information about what he spent his money on here. Now, I can see that there wasn't a purchase order number applied. If there were, that would be another level of detail. I could even go out and even display an image associated with that particular transaction. So maybe I want to see what the receipts are for that expense report. I can bring up that image as well. So the point I would like to make is that you can, through the use of those formulas, not only refresh the data, but you can drill down into multiple levels of detail depending on what you want to see. Now, to get this formula in place, there's a couple different ways to do that. I can use this formula by just simply starting in a blank worksheet and dropping the formula in, or I could take an existing report that exists in Excel and convert it over. So I'm going to start with that and show you real quickly how that works. This formula, although looks a bit complicated, we give you a formula builder, so all you have to do is fill in a few bits and pieces of information. Let's jump over to this sample P&L. This is really the same thing as the P&L I was just showing you, except that there are no formulas. It's a static Excel worksheet. The only formulas I have in here are Excel. So I've got my totals here, my variance calculation. I have something calculating the date and just some basic Excel type calculations. I'd like to automate this report so I don't have to continue to rebuild it every time I need to show it. I can do that by just coming into cell A1, going into my formula builder, and then going ahead and filling out this form. Now, the first thing I want to do is select the formula type that I'm working in. And so I'm going to go ahead and select this GXL formula, which returns a balance. The next thing I'm going to do is make sure that I say to shift the existing data that's in my worksheet so that I don't overwrite it. I want to maintain that template so I don't have to go in and add the graph again, add my logo again, change the color scheme, put all my lines in. I want to simplify that as much as possible. The next thing I'm going to do is select the general ledger I'm working in. So I've got a whole bunch of different GLs that I can connect to. I'm going to go to this just generic database so you can see what that looks like. As soon as I select that value, it reads my chart of accounts based on that general ledger definition, shows me some of the options that I have here available to me. For example, actual balances versus budget balances. For those of you that use encumbrances, we can bring those in as well. Your currency code, if you're multi-currency, we have the option of selecting those. The year that you're working in, and I'm going to reflect the numbers that are in that existing report. So I'm going to pick period 6 of 2017. And then down below are my accounting segments. So every transaction that I have in my system is broken down by these 5 segments: 2-digit company, 3-digit department, etc. In order to align with what's in my report, I'm going to go ahead and take that hardware sales line item there and select the account numbers that reflect my hardware sales. In that case, it's a range of accounts, 4110 through 4119. And I'm going to go ahead and select all companies, all departments, sub-accounts, and products. Now at this point, I just simply click Insert, and you'll see here in a second it shifts everything over, brings in my account balance, which reflects the number that's static here in my worksheet. Now, to better align with that, I will go ahead and just round it up. And I'm going to go ahead and take that the formula and put a minus sign in front of it so that it shows as a positive balance versus a negative, since it is a credit. Now that I match that number exactly, I'm just going to replace it with the formula. So now that formula is in place, if I click on that cell, you'll see where it's pulling the data from. That also means if I change any of those values, it's going to go ahead and update and bring the next set of information for me. Now, to better align this report and convert it over, I'll just drag and drop some things into place. I'll do the same thing with my account and sub-account and product. And then I can go ahead and continue building the report. Now, this is a practice that our customers go through all the time, anytime they're converting over a report. It only has to be done one time, and as soon as it's done, you have an automated report, so you don't have to go back and do it again. Now, I'll go ahead and just then copy this formula across to go bring in my actuals and my budget and have those be reflected real time. I'll do the same thing. I'll copy this down one more line just to show you how we go after the data again. Now, you'll see there's a zero balance. That's simply because I have not filled out anything for my account, sub-account, and product. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll just select a range of accounts, or sorry, a listing of accounts, and bring those in. And you can see my balances will go ahead and update as soon as I finish entering. To finish the report, I just continue on that path of copying and pasting into all of the cells that have numbers so that they become values. And then I would also just go ahead and update my cell referencing for the company, department, year, and month so that I can use the items on the right as parameters versus having to come up here into this report information and update it there. So simply by referencing the cell that exists down here in column N, I can automate this report even further. When I'm all done, I always like to take this information and use the grouping feature in Excel and group that on up just to get it out of the way. It's really for my purpose, not for the end user. So now I've got the starting of that automation. As I said, that's something that our customers do when they first get a hold of Spreadsheet Server. They'll take their existing report and automate it as best they can. Now, I focused on financial reporting because that is the focus for most of you, although just keep in mind that with the connection in Spreadsheet Server and the access to this ribbon, you can build reports across any part of your ERP, whether it is going after your AR data, your sales totals, inventory levels, accounts payable, open invoices, payment history, payroll data, it doesn't really matter. Once the connection is established, you can access information from anywhere in your ERP. Now, because we love Excel so much and love the different things that we can do with it, I always like to show some of these financial dashboards because a lot of times management teams, boards, they like to get a quick glimpse of the data in a summarized fashion. They don't necessarily care about the details. So we can present that same information at a little higher level, throw some green and red arrows at them so they can see what quick changes, show some graphs and charts really quickly so they can get a quick understanding of what's happening without having to dive into all of the details. If they want to, they can use the details here and drill down just like I showed you before. Because there's a formula in place, I can use the drill down feature and go after the information I want to see. Your current and quick ratio, taking a look at that data, again, represented with some green and red arrows, getting into your operating cash flow, working capital, accounts payable turnover. You can see that you can just about display anything you want. You're probably already familiar because of the amount of time you're spending in Excel. Maybe you already are creating some of these dashboards and views. But anything you can do to present that information in a picture makes end users who might not understand the data real well, it makes it easier for them to get at that information and understand it. So, we talked a bit about building out reports. We did a little conversion of a report, so that's always really helpful. Maybe you want to just grab some numbers real quick. You can certainly drop a formula into a blank worksheet. So we could do that again by using that formula builder. Pick the type of formula we want, whether it's a accounts, general ledger balance, or maybe when we want to go get some AR aging, we can browse out to a query, select our AR aging information that we want to see, just simply pick a few parameters, and then go ahead and place it into our worksheet. So I get my first AR aging bucket here pretty quickly. I'll just copy and paste that across and change some parameters so I can go get the rest of my aging buckets. Now at that point, if I want to go ahead and graphically show that information, I can just highlight it, insert my favorite kind, donut, and show it here quickly and easily, giving them the information that they need. So within a matter of seconds, really, you can get to the data that you want to see, present it in whatever fashion makes sense. And then lastly, maybe you want to share that information. Most often our customers are pulling together a number of different worksheets and sending them off to users. Maybe they're even printing them. We have a built-in feature in Spreadsheet Server that allows you to automate that process. At the end of my ribbon here, you'll see a section called Distribution Manager. That gives me the ability to distribute any of the reports in my workbook and to control who sees what portions of those worksheets, as well as to set them up even on a schedule if I choose. So I went ahead and started that process by creating a control sheet, and it's to the far end of my workbook here. And the first line item that I inserted in here was a copy of my financial statements and saving that to a file. So let's open the specs window and I'll show you exactly what I did. I went ahead and selected File Save and named the file. I identified that I wanted that file output to be in PDF, and I selected a location for my financial statements to be saved. The next step is to pick which of the reports in my workbook I want to make sure I add in here. So I can add those in and then just click push, and it'll go ahead and update what you see here. So let's go ahead and protect these so that they can't be modified in any way. I'll just push that back out. It'll go ahead and update that line item. Now let's go into the next line item. My supervisor needs to see a copy of these financial statements. So let's go ahead and take a look at her specifications. Rather than send her to a file location, I'm going to go ahead and send her an email with an Excel attachment. She needs the profit and loss, and because she's a manager, she needs to take a look at the budget to actual for her specific department. So I went ahead and selected her department directly from the P&L. I actually just came out to the P&L. I referenced the cell that has the department in it, so right here, and I placed her department number right in that value and clicked add. So it shows up as a line there. The next thing I did was go out to my email section of this specification window, selected Sherry from my address book, gave a subject title to the email that's going to be sent, and then drafted the body of the email. Again, I click push and it inserts it into my Excel worksheet. Now at this point, I probably have several managers that need to see reports. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy and paste those down. And I'm going to go ahead and change the recipient here, as well as to change the department code. So I can change what department is being viewed here for Tim, and I might do the same thing for Corey. Corey might have department 225. So we'll just go ahead and adjust those. Now, when I'm ready to send these out, I can go ahead and either manually select distribute all to send all 4 line items out. I can select distribute selected line item to send 1 or more line items out. Or I can use our scheduling tool to point to this definition and schedule these to run on a consistent basis. So again, our goal in using Spreadsheet Server is to give you access to your data in a way that is live and dynamic, but you know that you're getting the truth of what's in the system, give you a way to automate the sharing of those reports in a way that is user-friendly and makes sense to the end users, and be able to take advantage of all of the functionalities that exist inside Excel while adding some additional parameters along the way, some different formulas that bring that data in real time for you. Okay, Ernie, I think I'll turn it back to you for the final few slides and to wrap up. Certainly, if people have questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Sue, for your insights, but also just showing us the power that it has. It still like blows me away when I see what can be done. Just from when I was really a heavy Excel user, maybe 10 or 15 years ago. But even in the last couple of years, when I see the ability to pull that data from all these ERP systems and the way to schedule things and distribute things, and I used to sit next to the person that pushed out the reports and the board book, and just seeing this is wow. Yeah, it's just has to be a wow. And so hopefully you guys who might have been Excel bashers in the past can see why I was definitely a convert. So let me go ahead and launch our final polling question here, as I have a few questions here for Sue. Hopefully they're a couple quick hitters. And so, Sue, can you share with me kind of some of the, like, let's just say that I'm a client and they do a demo. What are the things that really that they're most surprised about? Just a few things that you commonly see that someone wasn't expecting in terms of what the spreadsheet server can do.
Sure. Yeah, I think the thing that really grabs people is that ability to just simply refresh. Because when we talk with folks, they're spending the bulk of their time in that 1 to 3 hours a day they're spending on Excel. It's really dumping data in or exporting data into Excel and then manipulating it into the way that they need to see it. Many of our customers dump an entire trial balance into a workbook that has some formulas in place, VLOOKUPs, pivot tables, etc. Well, we don't have to take the time to do that. And I think that's the part that always surprises people is how fast we can convert over their templates into a live dynamic report. And there's two other things. The drill down capability really is something that people love, and then the ability to easily distribute without having to continually go out to email, go attach something manually and send it out. We can automate that entire process.
And let me just go ahead and ask you one final question, because obviously, as we've gone into this new remote reality, people have really needed, more updates, right? So let's just say they might have sent a report out every quarter. Now they have to send it out, right? They have to send it out every single month. So I would imagine that you've probably had a lot of incoming calls into, how do I do this? So you can set up the scheduling when the data is pushed and pulled from the ERP system. Can you give us a little more color on how that works and the ability, how often people can do that?
Yeah, so it's a live connection to the ERP in most cases. And so whenever I go after data or change a parameter, it's pulling that information right then. If you want to set up something to be automatically distributed on an ongoing basis, as soon as it sends that distribution, it went out and grabbed the latest information. So, there isn't a lot of real setup involved to make that happen. It's really about an hour of time to get it set up to be able to point to your ERP and get it able to refresh and send out reports. But that's something that happens all the time. And I think in the last few months, we've seen more people trying to get at their monthly data on a daily basis even, and looking at AR balances, not by 30-day increments, but by daily increments instead. So we can be able to provide that layout for them, and they can just simply click a button to refresh it and get the latest information.
Yeah, absolutely, tremendously valuable. Like on especially what you said, the AR side, I've seen a lot of research, and that's been by far the biggest concern, and people are still trying to get their arms around that piece. So thank you so much. So before I make my final comments, Sue, I'd like to first thank you for your tremendous content and insights and spending time with us today. So thank you so much, Sue, for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Just want to also remind everyone, or for the first time, let you know that Insight Software is a key partner of mine. We're delivering the first ever full-blown Treasury and Finance virtual conference. You've probably seen a lot of conferences out there that are webinars on steroids. We have a fully interactive experience where you can network in real time, find people at the conference, and you can get the value of every single dimension of a live event. Let me and Insight Software prove that to you. This has been a dream of mine for 5 years, and I'm so thrilled that Insight Software shares my vision of what the next normal is going to be in terms of events, which is going to be these full-blown virtual conferences. I also want to once again thank Insight Software as my webinar partner today and longtime strategic partner in serving the finance profession. And finally, to you, the audience, thank you so much for your valuable time. Stay healthy, stay safe, and make the rest of your day great, everyone.